Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're doing well. I feel like it's been a little while since we caught up. No, it's been it's been 2 weeks, but we had back to back to back and it was just chaos. The time zone for the last one in Saudi was a little bit for me, and the time zone for this one as well is going to be a little bit challenging for me as well. So if I do get videos out a little bit later, sorry, but once we hit the European season, I'll be smashing it. A little bit of housekeeping just before we crack on. If you do have a burning question, like it's burning, like you want to know the fastest way through a decreasing radius corner in Miami or something, whack it in the super chat, like do a super chat so it'll catch my attention. Obviously, if you're a member of the channel as well, you get a little helmet, that blue helmet that you can see behind me as your badge. And then I'm just laughing at the chat as you guys talk away. Then I'll answer that one, like obviously as a priority. All right, quick agenda as well. There's a lot we need to get through. It's a sprint weekend. It's Miami. It's low grip. It's low downforce. We've got that reg update that we didn't know of. I'm going to talk to, in the first instance, I'm going to talk to Hamilton and Lando. I'm going to tell you guys what they need to do to change their driving styles. Track characteristics, all the technical corners I've got here in front of me, predictions, strategy. Oof, we're going to go deep in this one. So yeah, this is going to be everything you need to know ahead of the Miami GP. All right, we always start with the weather. What are we looking at? Give me some insights. What's the weather? All right, let's have a little bit of a look now. All right, hopefully you can see that on the screen in front of you. Here we go. It's this Miami weather stolen from Google, and it's warm. So advantage McLaren in the long runs, of course. They've got the best tyre wear, but not too many corners that are going to smash the tyres. Maybe a few in the first sector. There is a long corner. So the warmth is there, but I think it's got like a humidity feel to it. I think there could be storms bubbling here. We've got a little bit of light rain on Sunday, 27. Very low minimums as well, so it's not going to get cold at any point. Oh, sorry, very high minimums. So it's not going to get cold at any point either. But yeah, keep an eye out for rain. Now, this is good for Max Verstappen because I've been saying that the Red Bull's going to struggle in Miami. So I always split like my philosophies in two halves. When downforce is smashing it, like super active, like through Cops, Maggots, Beckett's, Suzuka S's, the S's in Saudi, that's where I think Max and the Red Bull are particularly strong. But then you see the thing won't turn into the final corner in Saudi, or it won't turn into some of the Bahrain, like tight decreasing radius corners. It doesn't have good mechanical grip per se. So when the downforce bleeds off out of the car, the thing's very lazy. It doesn't want to turn. Max is there saying, understeer, no rotation, blah, blah, blah. So if it rains, I reckon that will help Max out just because he's, one of the best in the wet. So keep an eye out for that. Keep an eye out for those struggles initially with the Red Bull, but then if it starts raining, obviously Max, because he's a genius, he'll work it out. All right, so that's the weather. Going to be warm, going to be a bit humid, a little bit bubbly, maybe some thunderstorms and that sort of thing. I wanted to talk to you guys about not necessarily driver's mentality in part 2 of this live stream, but I wanted to talk to you guys about the driving techniques of Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris. Let's start with Lewis Hamilton. Hopefully some of you guys have come in or seen that Hamilton video that I put out, and I used the long corner of constant radius to characterize Lewis's driving. He'll brake at the last possible second, brake super hard and late and deep, and crucially, like hold on to that brake pressure, like claw onto it. He needs to, because he's broken so late and so hard. He needs to actually hook up the corner at one point. So he holds on to that brake pedal pressure. I think that's the problem with Lewis. He's not getting out of the brakes, allowing the car to just roll through the corner and therefore keep the minimum speed afloat, keep the downforce afloat. And then you're not going to get rear instability when you're not touching any of the pedals either. So I think this is something that Mr. Leclerc is doing very well at the moment. So hopefully you've seen that video, but I just wanted to double down and like pretty much highlight to you what's been going on with Lewis this year and what he needs to change. Now, just before I bring up the telemetry, this has been a strength of Lewis's up to this point in his career, but these cars don't like that. Like if he's telling the car, I want you to stop, and then he's telling the car, I want you to go. He's telling it to do two different things without that blend. Like it hasn't got the downforce of float in it. He needs to tell it, okay, slow down and then lift out of the brakes and then float and roll and then go again. And he's going to have a much better time if he asks the car to do that, as opposed to saying like, stop and then go with very harshly, if that makes sense. So look, I'll show you guys in the telemetry. I'm trying my best to explain this, but I'll show you guys on the telemetry now. So hopefully you can see that on the screen in front of you. All right, so I've got a few examples here which I want to talk you guys through. And again, look for the minimum speeds. Look for Lewis not getting out. He's got to get his left foot out of the brake pedal. He keeps complaining that, you know, there's not enough rear stability in the Ferrari. That's all garbage. I'm not buying that for a second. What he needs to do is get his left foot out of the brake pedal earlier. So let's have a look. So this is Saudi Arabia, in qualifying with Leclerc. And I called out turn 13 as being a crucial corner. Have a look at this, the difference in minimum speeds between Lewis Hamilton in white and Charles Leclerc in red. And this is one corner, guys. So Hamilton's minimum speed is 155. Leclerc's minimum speed is 168. I can't begin to explain to you what a difference in grip level that extra speed has, what a difference in the car's balance that will have, the car's grip and feel, what a difference when you go to apply for the throttle from 168 kilometers versus going to apply the throttle from 155 kilometers. I can't begin to explain to you what a difference. Anyway, the delta through this corner, 0.064 before, 0.217 after, you're looking at nearly 0.2 of a second in the blink of an eye, just in the mid corner here. So this has got nothing to do with rear instability. It's him, Lewis, just holding on to the brake pedal, and he needs to just get comfortable to get out of the brake pedal. So if you have a look at the brake trace here, I'll try my best to zoom in so you guys can see it. Can you guys see that on the screen? Yeah, so Hamilton's in white. I'll just move my white cursor. Hamilton's in white, and firstly he's braking later. You see Leclerc's comes on slightly earlier, and then Hamilton, he's holding on to that brake pedal. That's the part that I feel like is the wrong part. Not necessarily, look, we don't have the steering here. So I'll talk to that in a second, because Alex Brundle, who I really like actually, I think Alex Brundle's got a great racing mind and racing brain. I think he would be a good coach actually. I agree with him, but I'll show you guys what he says in a second. So this is your first example of Hamilton holding onto the brake pedal, losing the minimum speed, getting caned on the mid to exit. Let's take a look at the second example. This is in Bahrain. I'm going to show you guys an example in the last two corners. So Leclerc in red, Hamilton in white. Again, have a look at the minimum speeds. Like, hopefully you guys can see that. I'm going to zoom in. You see this here, this white minimum speed, he's getting caned. Like, from that position, like, good luck. How are you going to get the car through the corner and out of the corner if you can't carry the minimum speed? You've got to remember, these cars work with downforce and speed. An aeroplane sitting on the runway is not in the air, not because the wings aren't working, or not because something's not, it's because the thing's not moving. Once the aeroplane starts moving, bang, the downforce takes over and you lift. The faster the aeroplane goes, the more lift it has. It's the exact same in Formula One. The faster the car goes, the more grip you're going to have, the more downforce you have. So you've got to find a way in this reg set to keep the minimum speed and keep the downforce active and afloat in the middle of the corner. So how do you do that? You get your foot out of the brake pedal. That's the way you do it. So yeah, you brake early and soft to not upset the balance, and then get your foot out and line up the exit, and then bang, pull the trigger on the throttle on the exit. That's the way to do it. So these two corners here, I thought in Bahrain, are interesting. So yeah, I think this is telling. So that's your Exhibit B second example. Now Japan, again, I'll show you guys turn 1 and 2. So just a quick recap. I've showed you guys Saudi Arabia, a long corner, turn 13. I've showed you guys Bahrain, final sector. I'll show you guys Japan, turn 1 and 2. Let's zoom in on that. There's your minimum speed there. Mr. Hamilton in white. I don't know, guys, what's going on here, like why he can't resolve for this, but I'll show you Brundle's quote in a second. 177 at the bottom, 181. So 4 kilometers there into turn 1 and 2. The Delta, meanwhile, is doing one of these, going in Charles Leclerc's favor, like half a tenth. You know, it's before the laps even started, he's cooked it. Why? Hamilton in white, holding on to the brake pedal. Here it is. Show you guys. That's your brake trace on the left. So in white, Hamilton's not getting his foot out of the brake pedal. He's not confident enough to do that. So if he can get his foot out of the brake pedal and just roll the speed into the corner, mate, I reckon, mate, a problem well defined is a problem half solved. I think we're on the money here. I think this is what he needs to do. Now, look, he's got a million people telling him what he needs to do, which is a shame in a way because on one sense, he doesn't have enough people telling him. Like Ricardo Adami's not going to tell him this. Brian whatever is not going to tell him this. Frederick Vasseur's not going to tell him this. Leclerc won't either. So in one sense, he doesn't have, but then he'll have all these other people trying to say, oh, it's this and this. Anyway, we'll show you what Brundle says because this is really pertinent as well. Let me bring up the quote from Alex Brundle, who I really like. I just want to start by saying I like him. I agree with him most of the time. His insights are brilliant. I like Alex. Let's bring it up on the screen. Hopefully you guys can see this. So I'll read out the quote for you, and as we go through, we'll just pick it through. So he's talked about moving the car towards him, and he's talked about moving towards the car. I don't know what that means, to be honest. Like, okay, he's trying to get the car to work. He's trying to work for the car. That goes without saying. I look at the data from Lewis every weekend. Me too. For limited from what I have. Of course, he's got more data. The trait is the same. He goes into the high-speed corners, and this is critical. The high-speed corners. Presumably, he's talking about when Lewis brakes and turns into the corner, carries the speed in, like turn 1 and 2 Japan, turn 13 Saudi, the final 2 corners in Bahrain, these types of corners, right? Which we don't have at Miami, by the way. So that's your first insight, is that Lewis should go a little bit better here. He goes into the high-speed corners and he hits a little bit more brake pressure than Charles. So we spoke about this, right? Braking later, braking harder as you have to. But the third piece, holding on to the brake pedal, I think is the one that's potentially missing here from Alex. So where are we? So high-speed corners hits the brake pressure more than Charles. You can draw a line directly up the wheel speed graph to the steering trace, and the brake aligns perfectly with a tiny bit of movement. I think what he's saying there is aligning the peak brake pressure with the peak or maximum steering load as well, suggesting that Lewis is asking the car to brake really hard and then turn really hard at the same time. It just upsets the Ferrari everywhere. So he's referring to the rear instability of the car, or what Lewis is inducing that rear instability. Leclerc has just missed the measure on the brakes. We know that Lewis had a problem with the same thing. I saw the data at the Mercedes. So he's talking about the rear instability. I'm talking about, well, hang on, the rear instability happens from time to time. Lewis's lap time is not there each and every single lap. So I don't think I'll put the rear instability to one side. I just want to work on the lap time. There's plenty of times when Lewis goes through corners without rear instability, but he's just plain slow. That's what he needs to resolve for. We know that Lewis had a problem with the same Mercedes. Okay, here we go. Can he coach himself out of a lifetime's worth of driving technique to move towards the car? We will find out. So interesting words there from Alex. Can he coach himself? Can he coach himself? Like, are you serious? At what point? And I 100% agree with Alex because Lewis doesn't have a coach. But at what point does a 7-time Formula One world champion not have a coach? You've got 400 million people looking at the car to make the car better. Who does Lewis have to make him better? Do you think Roger Federer won 8 Grand Slam championships in Wimbledon without having a coach? Of course he didn't. Like, you need these people to help you. People are what is going to make it work. People are going to come in with new eyes and fresh eyes, and he needs to get someone in his team, in his corner, that gives him the insight, similar to what I gave him before, which is about getting out of the brake pedal and carrying the minimum speed through the corner. So I thought it was an interesting quote there from Alex that says, can he coach himself? Mate, like, no, he can't coach himself. And you wouldn't expect him to. Like, none of the champions, no one that's ever succeeded in anything, whether that's golf, tennis, cricket, swimming, languages, sports, arts, dance, you know, it's teamwork, right? Lewis is all about teamwork and open-mindedness. I'm surprised he doesn't have a driver coach in his corner. Let me know what you guys think in the chat. But that's my little advice to Lewis. Get your foot out of the brake pedal, roll the car with the minimum speed through the corner, let it float. If you're not touching any of the pedals, nothing's going to step out. Rear won't step out. And if you don't go for the throttle too early, the rear's not going to step out like that either. So I think that's Lewis covered. I wanted to talk to you guys now about Lando Norris as well. A lot of people saying, wow, Oscar's been doing fantastic this year and he's really come a long way. And what's going on with Lando? I think they're looking probably at the drivers too much in this case. and not necessarily at the car. Let me explain and give you a bit of context. The car's changed a lot from 2024 to 2025. McLaren have been very aggressive this year with their anti-dive. It gives a lot of front end into the car. The car just points like a dart. It's got heaps of front end grip. It can carry speed through the S's. Lando's not comfortable with that. That's all it is. The car suits Oscar naturally, I think, more than it suits Lando. If I can give you an insight into why this would be, I think Lando's too quick with the steering rate. So he turns in too quickly and the corner, he upsets the corner. Completely different issue to Lewis. So you got to be able to look at the drivers, see what they're doing, see what the car characteristics are, and then how to resolve for it. Obviously, that's what I do when I help open Formula drivers. So Lando turning in too quickly, the steering rate is too quickly. Now they keep having focus and attention on the rear of the car, like, oh, the rear instability. No rear instability. The McLaren front end is a weapon, so the rear can't keep up. So you've got to slow down the front a little bit for Lando. I think it suits Oscar pretty well. So what I'm trying to say is it's not necessarily that Oscar's come of age and the car just naturally suits him. Lando's going to have to iterate and adapt. Let me show you guys a few examples of where Lando turns in and the rear just steps out, sometimes under braking, sometimes not necessarily under braking. And if you're a Lando Norris fan, you'll be happy to see this because we don't have any of these corners in Miami. He should be fine. Let's do this one here. Can you guys see that? Okay, so this is China turn one. Watch the hands. Turns in, and then the rear instability, right? So no braking into turn one. It's just a lift. But I think Lando's asking too much of the front of the McLaren. Here we go again. Yeah, he's turning in too quickly. It's a steering rate issue. If I play it again, just so you guys get the picture. That's not the back. That's the front being a weapon. Now, we've seen this in Bahrain as well when he was like failed to miss time. The corner down at turn, I don't know the corner name. Give me a sec, I'll bring it up. It was this one over here. After this one here. So Lando's turn, and the front end catches him out. Watch. He turns and the thing just turns. And he's like, whoa, hang on, I got to go back out and go in again. And that's the part I wanted to call out to you guys here, is that he turned in. And if he continued on this trajectory, he's just given it a little bit of extra lock, by the way, he's going to hit this cone. So he has to open the steering, such as the front end of the McLaren. Another example here, potentially. Yeah, this is in Bahrain testing, the same thing. Like, it looks like the rear's on ice, but it's the front saying, I'm going, mate. Wherever you turn me, I'm going. So the rear can't live with that. Anyway, so I think completely different issue, and I think they're looking in the wrong direction. I'm not sure why the McLaren engineers are struggling so much to just slow the rate of steering down for Lando, or for Lando to just slow his hands down a little bit. That's all that needs to be done. There's a few shots of Bahrain testing. So I hope that helps you guys. I just wanted to call out, like Hamilton, his issue's not getting out of the brake pedal, the minimum speed's falling out of the Ferrari. And Lando's issue is he's too quick with his hands and it's upsetting the balance of the car on the corner entry. Cool. So I hope that helps you guys. Now, look, it's too early to talk about mentality. I think if these guys resolve for these technical issues, you'd be amazing how they spring out of bed in the morning and they're super happy to go racing again. So that, you know, mental deficiencies are downstream of technical deficiencies. If you resolve the technical deficiencies, you're going to resolve for any self-doubt or mental deficiencies, right? So it's like a loop. So you've got to resolve, your technique has to be bang on, and then you've got confidence and then your technique's better, and then you start fighting for a championship and so on. So I hope that helps, like I say. All right, we need to crack on with the sprint weekend and sprint weekend format. Let me bring it up on the screen for you guys so you know what we're talking about this weekend. So it's a sprint weekend, one of 6, I think, sprint races this season. So we've got Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We've got FP1 initially. That's your only opportunity to practice driving. And this is where I think the teams go wrong, before your sprint qualifying session. Now, if it was me in this FP1 session, I don't want to do any long runs. I don't care about long runs. I don't care about tire degradation. I'm not interested. My focus on Friday morning is to get the car set up for sprint qualifying. That means I'm going to run light fuel. I'm going to try and work on my driving and try to get the most out of the car. Understand how to prepare the tires. That's super important. Liam Lawson fell foul of this in the China sprint. So FP1 for me, I'd only be doing short bursts. I'd have 10 laps of fuel in the car. I'd be playing around with the tires. I'd be practicing on the tires that I'm going to be qualifying on. My FP1 is for this. Now, the mistake that happens, these engineers are like, oh, we need long run data. We need to see the degradation. Mate, you're going to see that on the sprint on Saturday. Don't worry, you're going to get that data. Your focus is here. Sprint qualifying, Friday afternoon. That's the most important thing. Read this here. Sets the grid for the F1 sprint. You guys know, like, it's hard to pass this year. So sprint qualifying is your priority. Once you get to the sprint, you're going to get your race data. Whack on the mediums or whatever. Do your third of the race. You're going to get your degradation data. That forms the basis for your strategy on Sunday. Watch, guys, watch out for this. Watch the teams use the FP1 to work on the Grand Prix. Dum-dums. Dum-dums. You don't want to be doing that. You're going to compromise your sprint qualifying. You want to get the tires working in the right window. You want to switch them on. You want to make sure they work throughout the lap. You want the driver in harmony. Don't make too many changes. Last sprint weekend in China, the engineers like Ricardo Adami and there was another engineer, I can't remember who, I think it was Oscar's engineer. They phone up their driver 10 minutes into FP1. Hey, how's the balance? Do you want a front wing update? Whoa, hang on a minute. Like we're just cleaning the track here. Like it's too early to talk about a front wing update. What are you talking about? So that's the mentality that for some reason they don't get at the moment. I'm trying to give you guys an insight into what the driver needs. He needs confidence in sprint qualifying. If you start high up in sprint qualifying, mate, you're good. No problems at all. Just a quick rundown on how the sprint qualifying works. It's pretty much one lap. Well, that's the intention for most of it. So you've got to run the mediums in SQ1 and SQ2. Therefore, I'd be trying to practice on that in FP1. And then you've got to run the softs if you make it to SQ3. You've got a free choice for the sprint race. That's fine. You can make changes, obviously, between the sprint race and proper qualifying, obviously. So you've got an open Parc Fermé window there. Obviously, sprint qualifying shortened. Like I say, the idea is to give it one run. The aim is to ensure each car only has one flying lap in each session, though 2 runs could be done in SQ1. The 2 shorter sessions restrict the cars to 1 run in each session, with the potential for 2 runs in SQ1 and SQ2, depending on the circuit. Okay, cool. So the idea is to put the drivers under pressure, right? So it goes back to my point. You want to have qualifying dialed in FP1. Keep an eye out for that. All right. Next topic on the docket, track updates, car updates, regs updates. Track updates, I don't think we have any. If you've seen any track updates that I haven't seen, whack them in the comments for me, but I haven't seen any updates. I wanted to draw your attention to not necessarily a rule update for this weekend, but something that we haven't seen before. There's been no transparency season to date on the new overtaking rules or the amendments or tweaks to the overtaking rules to which car is in front. And this all came up at Saudi Arabia turn 1. Max, Oscar up the inside. Max got pushed off in inverted commas. So this all came up there. So then we get an insight into these rules. I'm going to read them out to you because it's the first time we've seen them. It's the first time I've been on with you guys. And then we can discuss them. So this is from the race. Thank you, guys. In relation to a car overtaking on the inside of the corner last year, this is in bold, last year, there were 4 key elements. And 4 key elements as it pertains to what? Who has the right of way? Who doesn't need to back out? Like, you know, this is all garbage in my opinion. And by the way, these are not rules. These are guidelines. The new guidelines, read this down here. It's a word here. Guidelines on the left. Like, what the hell is a guideline? A guideline is an indicative, it's garbage, right? We should have rules that are defined with terms that are defined. Look at me, I've already started smashing these rules and we haven't even read them out. All right, so last year on top, this year down the bottom. So these were that for a driver to have earned the right to room when overtaking on the inside. So this is very specific to the inside only. Their car must have its front axle at least alongside the mirror. That's such an interesting point. I'd be placing my mirrors like really far up the car if it were me. Have its front axle at least alongside the mirror of the other car, no later than the apex of the corner. So you've got to be alongside before the apex. Be driven in a safe and controlled manner throughout the maneuver, whatever that means. Like define safe, define controlled. You need to define your terms here, mate. Without deliberately forcing the other car off track at the exit. This includes leaving a fair and acceptable width for the car being overtaken from the apex to the exit. So you can't force the car off, even if you're alongside, without deliberately forcing the other car off. That's the pertinent point. Keep that one. Be able to make the corner within track limits. That's easy when you're on the inside. Okay, so the new guidelines down the bottom. You need to have your front axle at least alongside to the mirror to the car prior to and at the corner of the apex. That's not an update for me. That's exactly the same as what we had here. Have your front axle at least alongside no later than the apex. Well, if you're at least alongside prior to, you're probably going to be alongside at the apex. So that's fine. Be driven in a fully controlled manner, particularly from entry to apex and not have dived in. That's fine. That's the same here. Be driven in a safe and controlled manner throughout the maneuver. That's fine. And in the steward's estimation, have taken a reasonable racing line and be able to compete the move whilst remaining in track limits. I don't see too much of a difference here, just that potentially they're starting to favor the person on the inside. Look, this is all rubbish to me. These terms aren't defined. Entry, apex, exit, safe and controlled is not defined. Like, if I can just begin to explain to you guys on the whiteboard, like, you need to define your terms. What is an apex? Because sometimes you've got long corners or it could be wet. So if you've got a decreasing radius corner like we have in Miami and the corner goes like that, decreasing radius, a lot of drivers can take the apex at any area through there. Like, there could be 3 spots. So, and what about China turn 1? It's massive. What about in the rain? You don't even hit the apex in the rain. You might drive a wet line. Again, I'm going to draw that corner as it's drawn, sorry. Decreasing radius. What if your wet line is like that? Where's your apex? You don't actually touch the apex. So what are you going to do then? Like, it's garbage. It's written by a kid. Anyway, so I thought I'd just let you know about that update, if you can call it an update. And like that, it's, for me, it's kind of meaningless. Yeah, you've got to be sufficiently alongside. You've got to keep your car within track limits. The rest of it is a referee's decision. So that's the only update I have from the track car regs update. So while we're on the track map, let's bring it up, and I'm going to talk to you guys about the characteristics of this track. Give me a sec. I need a drink. I'll have a read of some questions as well. We're going okay for time. Barbara, hello. So vague. What is a reasonable racing line, and is there a measure for it? 100%. You got to define your terms. Like, what happens in the wet, I think, is the worst one, when you don't even touch the apex. Like, what if it's a long corner, like China turn 1, and it's wet and you don't touch the apex at all? What happens? So what you really need is like a line that says, this is going to be our apex. That's going to be for each corner. This is going to be our dry apex, and this is going to be our wet apex. Like, you have to kind of, you almost need you need some sort of definitions here. Max, how you doing? You can be fully ahead and get the penalty when it benefits a Saudi invested team, allegedly. Yep, there's always going to be biases. EJAG, stating before the apex is saving the dive bombing. Yeah, but define apex. We don't know where the apex is. It's somewhere in a long corner. So then, is it a dive bomb if you dived in and you got alongside before your apex? Look, I don't have the answers here, but it's just frustrating. All right, so let's crack on. I'm going to talk to you guys technically now about the track characteristics. Okay, so Miami. So very low grip. I'm going to draw it out for you guys. Very low grip. The track surface just offers no grip for some reason. Low downforce as well. So we run low wings here. And therefore, the result of that is that you need to be progressive with your inputs. Progressive means you can't smash them. You can't smash the brake pedal. You can't smash the throttle. You can't turn in too quickly. Everything's got to be like do, 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 do. Like it needs to be just patience at each and every single time. So progressive is the first thing. The second thing that just escapes me now, progressive, and I was going to say something else. Like what Rob Wilson's thing, right? Introduce the car to what's coming next. Introduce the car. So that means if you're going to brake, apply the brake. If you're going to put throttle, apply the throttle. If you're going to steer, apply the steer. Yeah, what I was going to say was you need to separate the elements a lot as well. You can't combine too much like brake and steer into your decreasing radius corners. You've got to be very gentle, very progressive because there's no grip, right? So the tight lines is very important. I'll be taking a tight line in the decreasing radius corner of turn 7 and 8. But anyway, I'll talk you guys through as we go along. So turn 1, you're braking from, the other thing I'll call out just quickly is the minimum speeds at some of these corners. 75, 70. Downforce is not doing much at these speeds. 90 is a little bit rich. Why don't we just bring up the telemetry? I'll show you guys exactly what the minimum speeds are here. In qualifying, last year. So this is the best case situation, minimum speeds. So can you guys see that? So we'll go 2024. I just want to verify these speeds on my whiteboard here. So 2024 quali, Verstappen got pole. So this is the best case minimum speeds. So into turn 1, I've got 95. What does Max do? That's pretty accurate. 94. Good. At the back end of the track, I've got 90 before the back straight. Yeah, I didn't think that was 90. That's 75. I'm going to write it. That's not 90. No one's taken that at 90 Ks, mate. That's 75. And the last corner. Ooh, the last corner, I've got 70 on my track map. No one's taken that at, okay, Max did take it at 68. Okay. So we good? 90 for turn 11. That is interesting. Turn 11, where's that? That's here. 90, that's 90. Okay, the rest of it's pretty accurate. That's 90. All right, perfect. We can go back to my whiteboard. So this one's 75. So you've got a 70, a 75, a 75, and a 90. A few places, therefore, and a 95 at turn 1. A few places, therefore, where the downforce really drops out of the car. And the car's not as capable. When you go for the throttle and when you turn in, you've got to do so very progressively in these types of corners, like I said before. So that doesn't, if you're a Max fan, that doesn't favor the Red Bull. And it's just kind of Checo Perez stuff. I think Max prefers the high speed. Remember, his favorite track is Spa. Spa's got, nothing like these minimum speeds. You're flying through Pouhon and Fagnes chicane and Les Combes and so on. So that's the first call out. Not only does the track offer low grip, but you've got low speed and low downforce as well. Then you've got long straights to make it worse here and here, which means you're running low wings. So you've got low wings, low downforce, low grip. Yeah, I can't begin to explain to you how progressive you need to be. If I can just show you just quickly actually on the telemetry, like the way you apply the throttle out of turn 11, for example. Can you guys see that on the screen? Throttle. Yeah. So here. So you see, this is Max's throttle in qualifying. It's very progressive. Like he's not standing on the throttle at all. This is very different. Like this long drawn out throttle is very different to what you would see when downforce is very significant as well. So that's the way you drive the circuit. Now in terms of technical corners, can you guys see that? Let me just make it bigger. Here we go. All right, in terms of technical corners, I always like to highlight any technical corners on the track. So this is a big one. This is a decreasing radius, which means you're braking and turning at the same time. It's a long corner, probably going to kill the front right front right or the rear right, just depending on how much you load the car up. Keep an eye out for Leclerc here. He's struggled in decreasing radius corners previously. I'm curious, and I'm going to be watching him to see how he goes on the second part of this decreasing radius corner entry. Does he get any rear instability? Does he pinch any of the front tires? Leclerc's got a very aggressive braking technique into decreasing radius corners. So keep an eye out for Charles there if he makes a mistake this weekend. That's your first technical corner, the decreasing radius, and that feeds you onto the straight. And as we come down here, you do have a constant radius here. So front grip is very important. So this one here is constant radius. So a few long corners. Can you guys read my writing? And then you've got a chicane. So the curbs are important. Max is a machine here. And that's pretty much it, guys. Whoa, is that right? Yeah. That's pretty much it. You've got like a 90-degree left and then kind of a hairpin, kind of. So the key with this is to find a braking reference down here. It's quite tricky to see the breaker boards. You'll be presented with a 200, a 150, a 100, and a 50. It's so hard to see these, trust me, guys. Like, it's impossible. You've got this like wire fence. You're flying along here super quick and you just see these little breaker boards because it's like a temporary, it's not a temporary circuit, but it's very tight here. So you don't have nice breaker boards like you would at Belgium, for example. So yeah, it's going to be tricky to brake here, and it's very common to run off on the exit of 17. It's kind of a hairpin, kind of, in that sense, but it's not as tight. So I'm going to call it a hairpin. It's not as tight. So a few technical corners that are going to have different challenges. The decreasing radius, like I said, braking and turning, potential for the rear to step out, potential for you to lock up the unloaded left front tire. You need to use your engine braking here. Lewis, if you're listening, whenever you don't have braking capacity because you're turning and braking, it's 130 kilometer per hour corner, you know, it's heavily loaded, you know, in accordance with the friction circle, when you're turning and braking, you don't have as much brake capacity to work with. That's when you want to whack on the engine braking. Pull hard back with the gears and let the engine slow you down and complement and supplement your braking. And then you can play with things like brake shape and brake migration as well. Migrate the brake balance throughout this corner, either forwards or rearwards, just depending on what you feel. And then you want to whack the brake balance forward with a heavy braking into turn 11. It's important you do a big lift into turn 12 because you're asking the car to turn as you just come out of the throttle. Let's see if Max does that here. So what you want to do is you got to get this car through this long corner of constant radius. So you see Max just drives out of turn 11 and then a very big lift as he applies the steering. So that's exactly what you want to do. The quicker you can do that lift, the better. What that means is like get your foot quickly out of the throttle so you can turn nicely through turn 12. We're over here now. Turn 14 and 15, take the first entry curb and shortcut it as quickly as possible. Again, I want to see a big lift between 15 and 16 as well. That's very important. So if I show you guys here, very important that you get your foot out of the throttle. Max does that very well here as well, highlighting to you. He's only 74 and then down to 0 very quickly. Have a look at just the throttle work in that whole section. There's a few times he doesn't actually make it to 100%. So the section I'm looking at is here on the right hand side. And there's a few times he doesn't actually make it to 100%. 89, little squirt between the chicane, 36. Like he can't, he's turning and there's no downforce. The thing's clumsy. He's trying to move this car through this section of racetrack. Another throttle here, Max only puts it down 54%. Another throttle here, he puts it down 70%, gets out of it, and then he applies 100% on his way down the back straight. So just keep that in mind. It's like I said, you're turning a lot. Downforce is 75 kilometer per hour corners, and downforce is not doing a lot. So that's the problem here. Yeah, wheel spin, exactly, Max. If you go for the throttle at these low speeds while you're turning, you're just going to, like, you're not going to get forward momentum. You've got to get the steering wheel straight, bleed on the throttle, short shift, map in a throttle shape that works for you as well. all those sort of things. So what else did I want to show? Yeah, Leclerc separation of the elements is very important. So don't brake and turn too much. Don't turn and throttle too much. Very important as well. Okay, how are we going for time? All right, let's take a look. Predictions. Look, I think McLaren are obviously going to go well. Just because of the front end is going to be really helpful in that section of racetrack where the downforce is not as active. MA Khan, I've got your super chat. I'll answer it in just a sec. Where was I? Yeah, so the front end of the McLaren obviously is going to be helpful. I think the Red Bull will fade like more like Bahrain settings, unless it rains, of course. And then you just see the usual, the Mercedes and potentially the Ferraris getting in there. But I think whoever can practice and prepare for FP1 and sprint qualifying the best could potentially, like we saw in China, Hamilton steal a sprint pole. That can potentially happen as well, because whoever prepares and understands how to bring the tires in, that's going to be super helpful. Okay, MA Khan's got a super chat. I'll click it. Has anyone else asked one? Have I missed any? Hopefully not. No, I haven't. Okay. Which driver is most like Schumacher in technique? I think Lewis was. If you watch in Hungary, Schumacher's all in the entry as well. I feel like, and look, you're going to get different responses on different people, depending who you talk to, who have watched Schumacher across different eras as well. But you guys know the long con of constant radius in Hungary is my go-to, because it gives me an insight into where the drivers are planning their rotation. So if you look at the way Schumacher attacks the final two corners in Hungary, it's the late braking, early turn in, the tight line, get to the apex quickly, sort out any rear instability at the apex, get on throttle hard out of the corner. It's very different to Max. It's not Max's style at all. So I see it like Hamilton, like it was, or like Lewis used to drive. But obviously, like I say, it depends on different eras, different times. Like, was Michael doing this, in 2010, 2011 with Rosberg? Not sure. I'm thinking more like the Ferrari days. Remember, Michael drove with eras in traction control. It's tricky, but I think Lewis and Michael have a lot of parallels in the way they drive. Again, but that's just my analysis of having a look at Hungary, having a look at the lines, having a look at the slides that they have are very similar. If you can check it out, just watch Schumacher's pole in Hungary and watch, because a few drivers have taken pole. Verstappen's taken pole in Hungary. George has got a pole in Hungary. Hamilton and Leclerc have poles in Hungary. Lando got pole in Hungary as well. I think Ricciardo, no, maybe not Daniel. But a few drivers have got pole. So have a look at Schumacher's pole laps in Hungary and compare that to Hamilton, Verstappen, Russell, and so on. I think you'll find Schumacher, just keep an eye on the long corners of constant radius. I think you'll find Schumacher and Hamilton are quite similar. Okay, thanks for the super chat. Okay, let's crack on. So we've got, we need to talk about the compounds and strategy, don't we? What have we got going on? What are Pirelli doing? Hopefully they're bringing some soft compounds. What have we got? The compounds. Okay, so the trio of compounds chosen by Pirelli is the same of that used a fortnight ago in Saudi Arabia. The C3, C4, and C5. So they're the softest, are they not, in the Pirelli range? Again, just as Jeddah, this is a step softer than last season. Here we go. So the surface of the track that runs around the stadium is very smooth, exposing the tyres to moderate longitudinal and lateral forces. What they're trying to say is there's no grip. Moderate longitudinal means like not much going on. Thermal degradation will be a major factor as temperatures are expected to be very high. Given that last year's track temperature exceeded 55 degrees, the surface was relayed in 2023. Okay, grip levels will increase as the track rubbers in. The presence of support races for F1 Academy and Porsche, I don't think they're going to be doing much, to be honest. F1 Academy, like, not worth mentioning Pirelli. In 2024, so far Miami has been a one-stop race, including last year's. The medium was the tyre to open before a switch to the hard. So given that you know this, like, probably the tyres are going to be fine. We saw on the track map, like, it's very low speed, kind of Mickey Mouse stuff with a few long straights. The tyres, like, it's not going to help you heaps. given we know all this, like it shines a light on the sprint. You need to work out the tyres for qualifying. This is probably going to be a one-stop, probably. Particularly if it's hard to pass as well. Probably going to be a one-stop, but we'll see how we go. I'm not all in on that. Don't quote me on that one, but I think it's going to be all about qualifying, as it always seems to be this season, unfortunately. Even Saudi was a one-stop that had a lot more S's and direction change in it. So I'm thinking one-stop. I'll show you guys what they did last year if you're interested as well. Yeah, they ran the medium initially, like Pirelli said. They switched over to the hard compound. Obviously, there was it a VSC or a full SC that came out on lap 29? That's why these guys repitted, like Perez, for example. And that was good for Lando, that he stayed out and caught that safety car and went over to the hard. So, yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at. I think they'll go medium hard again this year, unfortunately. Okay, let's talk about turn 1, lap 1, and then I've got a few minutes for your questions as well. So here you can see some notes, which we're going to remove. We're going to talk about turn 1, lap 1. I think Max made a mistake last weekend, guys. A lot of guys, I posted a reel or a short on TikTok, and I said, what did I say? Give me a sec. Let me just clean this up and move this across. I said Max needs to line his car up across. So this was Verstappen on the racing line over here. Verstappen in Saudi last weekend. And this is Piastri over here. And what I said Max needs to do, and a lot of people didn't understand on my socials, he needs to preset in the box a very aggressive stance, so that he can quickly shoot across to the inside. That's not what Max did. Everyone said, oh, Max tried to get across there. I saw him. No, he didn't, mate. You're not understanding what I'm saying. If you think Max did this. What Max did was line up semi-straight, maybe a little bit of an angle. He went forward a bit first, and then he starts drifting over to cover Oscar. That's not the way it's done, guys. You need to preset very aggressively and fight and compete for this space quite early on in the straight, so that you force Oscar Piastri around the outside. So that would have been the play. I don't know why Max didn't do it. I'm sure he regrets it, to be honest. I think if he gets a chance at another pole, he'll probably do that. And look, I prescribe the same thing each and every single time. If we're here in Miami, and if I just draw the grid slot going into turn 1, we're going in the opposite side. So we're going into turn 1 like that. So you'll have the racing line. This will be pole, and this will be number 2 over here. So look, I'd prescribe the same thing. Like, it's just so much easier. Preset your car, shoot across, compete for this space here. You can control and manage the corner from there. You'll be fine. You'll be able to break deep. You'll get first to the apex. P2 will go around you. It's so hard to go around at turn 1. I don't see any problems here if you do that. So I just don't think Max executed it properly. I think he was just late. Now, would he have fully covered off Oscar Piastri up the inside? Maybe not, but like, try. You've got to try. You've got to preset your car across like 50 or 45 degrees and then shoot across. If Max had done that, well, those guys would have a valid argument. Like Oscar, there was nothing he could do. He got a bad launch. Okay, fine. But Max didn't, for me, he didn't do it. He didn't preset enough. It was a bit soft from Max into turn 1, off the line, sorry. Into turn 1, he wasn't soft. It was a bit soft from Max off the line. So, yeah, I'll be looking for that. It's a very short rundown, even shorter than Saudi Arabia. So it shouldn't be too many dramas. And then it's going to be about the tight line into the decreasing radius corner. I haven't spoken much about that, but I think the decreasing radius corner, if I can just draw it for you big, it's going to go like that. And I'm not a great drawer, but you've got option to do the tight line. The regular racing line, if I draw it in red, will be something like that. But the tight line in green, it's a step inside of the normal racing line. And it goes like that. I think there's going to be some opportunities for the tight line as well. So I'll be looking out for that. Who can drive in dirty air, who can get a better run down this back straight when you're competing, when you're attacking. Avoid aero wash through here is going to be very important. So yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Okay, so a quick drink and then I'll take your questions. So fire away, guys. We got 10 minutes. I think I did well. Got through everything I wanted to get through. Yes, I think you're referring to everything that we spoke about early with Hamilton. So, yes, how hard could it be for Lewis to learn how to drive this car after decades of heavy braking? I'm not sure why it's so hard, to be honest. I think they're not practicing. What's he doing? They're flying around. You know, they're doing their Met Galas. They got all their little sponsor events. They do a bit of work in the team simulator, but they're not saying, okay, for 5 days straight, I'm just going to take that turn 13 in Saudi Arabia each and every single time until it looks perfect, until I match what Charles is doing. I don't think there's that level of, you know, he'll probably do a few laps in the sim and be like, oh, okay, yeah, it should be fine. I'll give it a go. Got to go. See ya. It's a bit like that. Next flight, he's bouncing an event here, sponsors event there. Physio wants some time. You know, then the race engineer wants some time to talk about strategy. And then I just think it all gets diluted. Unfortunately, you know, the channel's name is lower lap time. That's all it's going to come down to is what lap times you can crunch. It doesn't matter how many sponsors you work with and so on. So I think he needs to get himself someone who can help explain, help him work through and is willing to put the time in. It shouldn't take that long. Same as Lando. To slow his hands down should just be a single instruction. And then like it shouldn't be that hard. So I'm not sure why it's so hard. Obviously, if I spoke to Lewis, there would be other factors like involved, but you know, at one point change has got to be changed, you know? So it should not be that hard to just get out of the brakes and roll the car through the corner. It's nothing you can't practice on a sim. Just a matter of coordination at the end of the day. So yeah, I'll answer the super chat from MA Khan, obviously first. How would you rank the 5 fastest current drivers 1 to 5? Verstappen, number 1. Who am I looking at now? Leclerc or George or Oscar at the moment, obviously, because Lando's not that comfortable. So I'll probably put them like 2, 3, 4. And then I'd put, am I missing someone? No, George, Oscar, and then I'd put Lando in 5, I guess. Just because Lando's not that comfortable with this car. It's not a reflection of his talent per se or his speed. I just think as it stands, he's not getting the best out of the car because he's not that confident or comfortable in it. So yeah. There's a few questions coming in now. Max, what do we got? How much lap time is there in a fantastic livery? It must be worth at least a 10th. It's funny you say that because the weren't Red Bull at one point doing a matte finish on the car because it had better friction, aerodynamic properties, apparently. So maybe it's worth something, but like in terms of look, yeah, nothing. Wheezy, do you think Oscar has Lando's measure on merit now? I think that Oscar's more comfortable with the MCL39, the new 2025 McLaren. Lando's still finding his way. I think like Lando, if he gets his head around it, can be quicker. I think Oscar's always leaving a 10th or 2 on the table, even though he's comfortable. Like in Jeddah, he left a 10th in the final corner, I think. So everyone's raving on about how well Oscar's driving, but I still feel like he's comfortable with the car and he's delivering 99% of the capability, but there's more. Trust me, there's more. There's more lap time in Oscar's laps, and it's there for someone like Lando to extract it. If he can pull it together and get a bit more comfortable, I reckon he can start to out-qualify Oscar more frequently. But it just turns out that Oscar's naturally comfortable and Lando's struggling. Then Lando's telling himself he's struggling and he's making it worse. I think at the moment, Oscar's doing the least worst job at the moment. Not necessarily doing like a superstar qualifying laps or anything. But yeah. So do you think Oscar has Lando's measure on merit? Yeah, at the moment. But I'm not sure Oscar's like I wouldn't hang my hat that Oscar's going to out-qualify Lando for the rest of the season. I think that might change as Lando gets comfortable again and then not comfortable again. And Lando's got more lap time in him. But Oscar's got more racecraft in him. Attack, defense, starts, restarts. Oscar's better there, for sure. Cameron Whelan. Is there any driver's natural style that suits the track, that suits this track or the conditions? Yeah, Perez. Perez was very good in progressive. I know he's not on the grid anymore, but he was good. The Baku's the same thing. Take the wings out of the car, slow speed, 90-degree corners, quick Mickey Mouse direction change. The wings aren't doing a whole lot at those speeds. Accelerating progressively, getting the steering wheel straight. Checo was very good at that. As for the current grid, I think Max is not bad. Obviously, he's very good. Maybe Leclerc as well. Leclerc's technically very good. I'll be keen to see how the McLaren drivers go, to be honest. I think this type of, like, Lando's going to go a lot better this weekend. He's going to come a lot closer in qualifying. I think Lewis is going to come a lot closer as well because it's not about the high-speed entries that we're sweeping in terms of turn 1 and turn 2 in Suzuka. It's just more stop-start. I think this will suit Lewis and Lando a little bit better. I'm expecting a close qualifying. So, look, you wouldn't write off Max and Charles to be quick. Yeah, Max's understanding is just very good. So he gets it. Barbara Martina. I read it could be windy. How does this affect the DRS? Should maybe the drivers keep it closed in case of wind? No, you're always going to open it down the straight and your foot's flat. You got to lift it open and send it and then close it under braking. The wind just normally affects the balance during the corner, particularly if you've got a crosswind or you've got a wind from behind, you need to brake a little bit earlier. And if you've got a headwind, then obviously it's going to give you more downforce. The car's going to feel great. So if we go over to our track map, for example, let's say that the wind direction in red is, say, coming across the track this way. Then that's going to give you a nice headwind into the S's and decreasing radius, braking there. But then it's going to push the car on through turn 11, which is you're going to need to brake a little bit earlier. So you just brake earlier. I don't think it has so much to do with the DRS. As you brake earlier, the DRS will deactivate and you're all good. We've got 2 minutes left. Bitter Dysania. Max is currently the best wet driver. Who else is also a wet expert besides Max on the current grid? It's Max and then Daylight. Max is leagues ahead of everyone in terms of this knowledge in the wet. Knows where to go. I don't think anyone's in Max's category in the wet at the moment. No one. There's Max and then Daylight. So that's it. James Hart, do you think Lewis is just past his prime now and his age is catching up to him? Or is it a technique thing? They say that qualifying pace is the first thing to go with age. I think it's a technique thing because ever since we've switched over to these cars in 2022, 23, 24, like Alex Brundle said, if I bring up the quote again, there's a part that I can call out to you. Can you see that? Alex said, "We know that Lewis had a problem with the same thing. I saw the data at Mercedes." So that suggests that it's an era thing. In this era of ground effect cars, heavier cars, bigger cars, very aerodynamically sensitive, then I just think it's that. These cars are not a natural match for Lewis's late braking style. End of story. That's it. So I don't think he's past it. He's still doing the same thing he always did, but that's a problem now. He's not able to adapt. So that's the problem. Barbara became a member. Thanks, Barbara. Nice to have you on board. If you're not familiar with the members program, in the first instance, priority replies here and then access to monthly tip of the month post. And then there's a second tier membership where we catch up monthly as well, just on a Teams call. And you guys can ask me anything. We can talk about anything, the races, the events, the techniques, go into detail a little bit more. So yeah, if you click join, you'll get an explanation of the membership. So welcome, Barbara. Thank you for your support. Top 3 predictions, the 2 McLarens, and then maybe Leclerc. I'll go with that. Any more questions, guys? I got to wrap up in a minute or two. Benzi News Showdown. Yuri Vips asked Peter Windsor about Jack's Jetcraft sponsorship. Could it keep him in the seat? Yeah, this is not my... You guys are talking amongst yourselves. That's fine. This is not my... I don't know what he's bringing and all that. Okay, I'm going to take one more question. Jesse with the big one, the pertinent question. When do you think Lewis will find his form? If he watches this live stream, he'll find his form. Look, it's taken him 2022, 23, 24, and 25 to try to understand the issue. I mean, if he hasn't worked it out by now, I don't think he'll... if he hasn't worked it out by now with the ground effect cars, I don't think he will. And we're going to switch regs next year. So he won't find it. That's it. So sorry to end on that note, guys. But yeah, it is the end of the regulation set. So you've had ample time to work it out, you know. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll do a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday recap as usual. Just to summarize this live stream, keep an eye out for the progressive nature of the circuit. Keep an eye out for the rain. I think Max will obviously find the grip on the outside of the track. Let's have a look in qualifying, how Lewis rolls out of the brake pedal, but there's not too many corners where he can do that. So let's keep an eye out for that. And I think the most important thing, keep an eye out for who does the homework in FP1 for qualifying, sprint qualifying. That's the most important thing. Who's the dum-dum doing the long runs? Oh, I'm getting my data for the race. And who's the one that says, no, my next most important session is qualifying. I need to practice that. Keep an eye out for that. Whoever does their homework and understands the tyres really well. Actually, George is pretty good at this. He's very switched on, like that the Pirellis are Mercurial and that he needs to practice and understand them. I think George can get on top of that. Whoever does that and has a good sprint qualifying and therefore has a good sprint race, I think we'll have a good weekend. Unless they can catch up or rectify like what happened in China. So I think the whole sprint weekend format is going to be the story of this weekend, together with the rain, of course, as well. Thanks for watching, guys. I will see you in the next one. Take care. Talk soon. Bye for now.